First, I just want to say, this is directly to the audience, but the three of you did beautiful, beautiful films. And I just want to express our gratitude for having the opportunity to play them. Let's start with Linda on Misophonia. I saw Heather Henson. Can you describe for us the relationship you have with the Henson family? What was their impact on the making of the film?
It was everything. We come from live puppet theater, and Heather Henson has an initiative to help is that better? Live or theatrical puppeteers transfer into film. So she gave, during the pandemic, she gave micro grants to a bunch of puppet artists. So we got $3,000 and 6 months of filmmaker workshops online with a cohort of 7 puppeteers. And together we all helped each other make films remotely. So it was everything. It was our first real film that we've ever made.
What was the size of the production crew? This is not only, it's just you, or there's more?
It's me and my husband and my mom.
Okay. Okay, that's almost too good to be true, seriously. It strikes me as complex to do this. Animation generally is complex, but this is an overlay of animation through puppetry.
Yes, so it's live action puppetry filmed on a multiplane, which is a stop motion device that we built in our studio in Ithaca, New York. So the filming space is 4 feet wide and 2 feet deep, but many layers of glass. So that's how we're getting this depth and this effect of parallax. But they're all flat puppets made out of vintage papers and pizza boxes. So the puppets are mostly about this big. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring them. They're fun to see, and then to get to see them so big is so amazing.
Hence the big screen. Okay, I'm just kind of staggered by all of this. At first, it was a mom and pop and daughter operation. Secondly, that the artistry of it is astonishing, literally.
Thank you.
We don't see a lot of the strings. The strings are sort of nicely blended into the background. They're there, but it almost looks like sight lines coming out of her eyes at some point.
Yeah, they're little pieces of plastic PETG. So we come out of live shadow puppet theater, and that's often how we use. Also working on overhead projectors is a big thing in puppetry right now, so we use these little clear plastic controls, and in the form of puppetry we do it. Seeing the controls is kind of part of the art of it, is like revealing the magic a little bit. So it was interesting to see what it would look like on film, and because I use a lot of textures, because I come out of a painting, a visual arts background, I love texture, and that helps hide or blend, I guess, more the controls. So they're there, but they're kind of part of the world. It also helps hide the reflection on the glass, which is really hard. We're learning how to work with.
I love seeing the controls.
Yeah,
Yes.
oh good, thank you.
Yes. And also from the storyline, the story is basically a mermaid takes a ride on a bus. That's your long
she's
line.
a commuter.
She's a commuter, right, exactly. So how about that? I mean, this is... okay, can you take us into that adventure, that thinking, please?
So I guess just the image of a mermaid commuting on a city bus, which I was a mermaid living statue for a while, and I also commuted on a bus, so these things just came to mind. And I have misophonia, so that image came to mind when I saw some puppeteers doing some film experiments, and I thought, oh, how would I make a film? And that image just came to mind. And over 5 years of thinking about it and not doing it, my own world of being on a bus and having these sounds, bother me, just became part of the movie. But I think the movie is also, I work in a library also, so I think the movie also also, it revealed itself to me what it was about from that image, but it's just about finding silence in the world that's very noisy and, you know, looking for places of just quiet. So.
Its runtime is 10 minutes, is that about right? Or
yeah, 9, I think.
Okay, this is one of the most fully realized shorts we have ever had.
Oh gosh.
I have to
wow.
say. I mean,
Thank you.
many of you have been here. Many of you have been here. You've seen the calibers of the shorts that we are fortunate to have. I have to say, Linda, this is just a fantastic achievement.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, you're more than welcome. Why don't we use the notion of sound to segue to Catherine? And I mentioned before that, you know, her film, the VSO, has Vermont Symphony Orchestra has selected her film as one of the 2 winners this year for best integration of music, if you will, into film. But if you were watching her film carefully, it isn't that it is a traditional soundtrack. It is not. And I would like to know, first of all, congratulations on winning this prize. And I think the VSO was excited by the idea that they could elaborate in a way. They could find the spaces in sort of the suggestions you create with your sounds. Can you talk about, first of all, you direct yourself in this. This is hard work that you're doing up on these drapes, if you will. So talk about the themes that you wish to bring out, because in the beginning you have shots of you grasping at your stomach, and there's issues there. How personal is this? And the form you use to sort of play this out in sort of an aerial dance, all of this feels fascinating to me. So can you tell us origin story here, how you got to this, and then the execution of it?
It's a great question. It's very personal. I'm glad that my film wasn't last, because I needed some time to collect myself after watching it on the big screen. It was really powerful. I come from a ballet background. I did ballet for 20 years and experienced a lot of dysmorphia and worked with disordered eating, and really struggled with my body image like throughout that process, which is common for the ballet dancer. You spend hours upon hours every week in front of the mirror in a leotard and tights. You're gonna have feelings about how you feel, about how you look in those moments. And so that was a struggle I had for my entire ballet career. And then in college, I discovered aerial dance, working with the Silks, with one of my professors. And the process of using my body for something that was really required a lot of strength really helped with reshaping my body image, because as a ballet dancer, the idea is to be as lithe and small as possible, but a circus artist is going to need a bit more bulk to be able to pull themselves up these vertical apparatus and to do push-ups and balance and plank poses and things that just required a bit more strength. And so it really started to change the way that I thought about my body and about the shape of my body and the size of my body. And so when I conceptualized this piece, using aerial dance was a natural move. I'm an aerialist by profession, so choosing the aerial mode was obvious and also symbolic because of my journey from ballet into aerial and the growth that came from switching the way that I thought about my body because of it.
So I'd like to ask really quickly, when you construct this, did you have a plan for the dance from the beginning, or certain things were clear and then you add on to it?
It started with research in front of a mirror, because that's where I could tap into that mindset again about how I felt as a ballet dancer. And so I did a lot of filming of myself grabbing at my body and sort of checking my body in a way that I did when I was a teenager as a ballet dancer, feeling the width of myself and the way that my skin folded. And so looking at myself in a mirror while I was doing that allowed me to kind of think about the imagery that I wanted to create in the film. And the Silks naturally, the aerial apparatus naturally really squeezes you no matter what you're doing. And so I tried to find the ways to use the aerial apparatus to squeeze me in a way that I felt like mirrored that squeezing that I participated in when I was checking my body.
I just want to also say that the climactic scene, where you are frenetic, is fantastic. Really, the way you threw yourself around and through and all of that, I would imagine, how did that come to be? It's almost toward the end, a release of some kind. Can you just talk about the climactic scene?
Yeah, it's a very bound wrap. It's a wrap around my body that really holds you there, no matter how you throw your limbs around. And so it was really important that I find something that was really secure, so that I could really express myself. When you're 25 feet in the air, you have to feel safe when you're throwing limbs around. And so it was important. It's a piece of choreography that I haven't used much in other works, because it doesn't have a really aesthetic look that typically I'm looking for when I'm making an aerial dance, are these beautiful lines and awe-inspiring poses. This one's like pretty vertical and almost human looking, because you're standing upright in the air. And so it felt more like I could be more expressive there.
Thank you. That scene worked for me big time. Next year, Catherine will be back, I'm hoping. For those of you who wish to attend the VSO performance, maybe if you've never been, it's certainly worthwhile, because the last year's two winners, Born Under Punches and The Social Chameleon, they were the co-winners last year, and those films have had their scores arranged by the VSO. And so what we'll do tomorrow at 4, we'll be at Wilson Hall this year. We won't be at the Mahaney Art Center. At Wilson Hall, on the campus on the Middlebury campus, you will hear for the first time how those scores were arranged by Matt LaRocca, and there will be a cohort of probably 8 to 10 musicians from the VSO. The films will screen and the orchestra will play simultaneously. If you've not seen that, it's worth your while, believe me. So next year, Catherine will be back with this particular film. She'll be working with the VSO, with Matt LaRocca and others over the course of the next few months to come up with an arranged score. I think will be fairly heavy on timpani. There'll be bells, I think chimes. I'm just sort of reading into it, but I think they're going to have a really great time. So that will be shown along with a film called The Cocoon, which is going to be coming up here, I think, sometime today, an animated film. It's a true pleasure. So please look for Catherine next year as part of the VSO event. Now, Fleming, first of all, we apologize. If you knew what was happening, if you saw what was happening at the beginning of this film, this is what's called a frame rate issue, where the desired number of frames per second is off. So it looked like Ginny was perhaps a bit in slow motion. Her movements were chunky. So this is why, I grabbed him and said, we're gonna fix this right now. And we did. We made a switch up in the booth directly to the file itself from another format that we had laid in there, and it fixed the film. And the reason I wanted to stop it is this film's really good. Can you just tell me how you became associated with Ginny? I want to know that. And also, you're not at a remove from her. You are her friend for several years. Is that right? Over the making of the film. Did you witness her passing? Because she passes away here. So all of that, you lived through all of that with her. I just want to know how you got attached to her.
Yeah, that's a story, but thank you also for the friend.
Oh, sure.
I really appreciate that. But yeah, I the first time I met her, I was actually living in her apartment in New York.
Oh.
I knew her daughter, and I was in New York. I lived in London at the time, and I was in New York, and her daughter said, like, why don't you live in my mother's apartment? And so I did. So the first time I met her, I'd been there for a couple of months, and she walked into her own apartment, and that's when I met her the first time. And I just immediately, oh my God.
So it's almost coincidental. This was not, a planned date.
No.
She just walked in.
No. She was very private. She didn't want publicity, or she didn't really want to know anyone particularly. She was very open when she was out and about, but she was very private. But because of her daughter, I met her that way.
Were you looking to make a film, or this just was, okay, I've got to make this film now, once you got to know her?
You know, that day she took me and her daughter to Christie's, to an auction preview. And when I saw her interact with the art, my jaw dropped, because I had never seen anything like it. And I thought I would really like to capture that somehow. That was my immediate thought. And then it's rare to come across a person, a character like her, like so confident and yet so open and so curious about the world. Yeah.
It seems that she came from very humble origins, right? Grew up in rural Virginia, is that right? Family didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So the risk-taking, you also have a section in there where she has to borrow a painting to put together her first exhibit, is that right? And then things sort of slowly grow from there to her becoming a massive collector of art. The Denver house, if I might ask, that was not the gallery itself. There was a separate, but her house looked like a gallery of all that art.
That was that house that she lived in, that glass house, was her idea. She worked with an architect, well, several architects. She was very particular. And it took, I think, 5-6 years to build, because she changed her mind all the time. And it was like, it had to be aesthetically, like, very precise. And it was an interesting experience, because I lived in that house with her. It was not very practical, because there were no there were no doors, really, no door handles. So when you, in the kitchen, when you opened the drawers, you had to sort of like you couldn't open them. And then the other thing was, like, when you were in the house, and she lived on a public park, you felt safe there. But when you then walk out and think, oh my God, everyone can see her. Her bathroom. No, seriously, her shower had glass. It was, and she was desperate not to be seen. So I think it was it sums her up beautifully, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this must have been a beautiful ride, in a way. To how many years in total were you part of her life, or she part of yours?
Probably about 7 years, I think. It took a long time to get close to her. And then she was 88 so it's like in her late 80s when I met her. And the way I really got got close to her was because she wanted to make films. She was 88 or 86 or whatever, and she wanted to make films. And I was a filmmaker, so we started to work on an idea together. And what you see here, I never intended that to be a film, really. I was literally just shooting on my phone, because I engaged with her, and then I was just...
All of this is on your phone?
Most of it is on my phone, yeah. So it was... But we were very close. We got very close.
Audience is going to have somebody's got questions for these brilliant filmmakers. Does anybody want to jump in? Top row, go ahead.
Who knows, whatever. Judy wanted, I don't know what. She was inspired by certain architects, and she just had this idea that she liked simplicity and glass. And she was very minimalist. But no, I don't know. I don't know. She wanted to build a sculpture or something. She said it was her life's work. That was her masterpiece. That was that house. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah, Karen.
Catherine, I loved your film. Doing the aerial work, was part of it the weightlessness, being off the ground?
Did anybody hear the question?
No.
It had to do with the weightlessness of her performance, right? Being off the ground, what that was like.
Yeah, I think weightlessness is what we strive for as aerialists, to look weightless. But I think that it doesn't feel that way. There's a lot of struggling with your own gravity as an aerial performer and needing to build the strength and endurance to be able to hold whatever weight you have up. And so I think the focus for me was less on the weightlessness and more on like managing my weight through my strength. And yeah, the fabrics are, the more gravity you have, the more they're tightening in on you also. So there's an element there too of symbolism. But yeah, thank
Take
you.
one more question. Lynn?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to compliment both of you. And for your film, Catherine, it was just, my heart's in my mouth sometimes because I'm so afraid you're going to fall. But your body's so strong and beautiful. It's such a juxtaposition to the title and to what you're feeling inside. And then the puppetry was just magnificent. I felt so that funny, and I didn't expect her to be a
A mermaid.
Good, meant to
I
be a
actually
surprise.
thought you were going to be from Sweden or Copenhagen, wherever the mermaid sculpture is. Oh, you also had the European sound to the emergency vehicles.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
trying to kind of mix up where it might be. There's also peacocks. There's all kinds of.
Right, and the sign for Lowell, Mass. That was when I realized it probably wasn't.
We have, okay, we'll do one up in the balcony. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you. This was a marvelous program. I mean, really beautifully put together. And I want to thank you, Roy, you're the person who did it.
Welcome.
So thank you. I just wondered about the soundtrack for the core to ballet, Cornice Free. But it was amazing already before it's been orchestrated. So could you tell us something about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to get to talk about the musician. I met him in college. He was the accompanist for our modern dance classes, and he's a breath artist, beatboxer, and vocal percussionist. His name is Shodake, and I had tried and failed to convince him to do many projects with me for years. And as luck would have it, the pandemic gave him some time on his hands. And so I reached out to him about this project, and he was really moved and actually like the most involved of any of my contributing artists. He really wanted to dig into the subject matter with me and talk deeply about the content. And he lives in Baltimore and I live in Oakland, and so during the pandemic we worked remotely on developing sounds. I would get in the air and video myself, and he would be in his apartment in Baltimore just trying out sounds, banging on water bottles and wine glasses, and making some beautiful landscapes with the breath, bringing in some wind and things also. So it was a really interesting process, and he made the sound score for me before I had finished choreographing. And so when we went to shoot the piece, I actually shot it in silence because the piece that he made was a little too short for what I had ended up choreographing. And so I shot the piece in silence and then sent it back to him, and he re-recorded the sound score over the film. And so yeah, it was a really unique and interesting process. I'm glad I got to talk about it.
We're about out of time because many of you are going to want to go to an 11:30 screening. So could we please give one more hand? I mean, so many extraordinary work.